Hey there. Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday. Your favorite host, Tim and Tim. We're back. My boy, Tim Vest, back from vacation this time. What's up, man? We missed you here.
Yeah, thanks for holding down the fort while I was gone. Um, but
How's Iceland?
glad to be back. um, Pretty cool actually. Not as icy as I thought it would be. Um,
Oh,
you know,
that's
that's
the
that's
whole
always
point, ain't it?
yeah,
Like,
that's
what's it,
that's
the
always the
Vikings?
joke. Yeah, that's the joke, right? Greenland's got more ice and Iceland's got more green.
Yep.
Um, but yeah. It was settled by the Vikings. Really, man, really cool country. Really, really cool country.
It's
I
funny.
don't know that I could have.
I was on a
Go ahead.
trip to Hilton Head, and one of the guys that was there recently, he said that one of his favorite places actually was Iceland that he went to visit, and they want to go back for another 10 days.
Yeah. The only thing I'd like to see a little bit different is and not to pay $90 for 3 hamburgers.
Is it really that
uh
expensive?
the food's expensive. Some things are
Mm.
cheaper. The food's expensive though. Gas is about the same, but oddly enough, man, they're we Tim and I were just talking about some expense stuff before this chat, before we got on here. Um and they their what am I looking for? Their utilities are extremely cheap in that
Really?
country. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
is it a
because
lot of, like, renewable stuff? Solar and wind?
it's not so much solar and wind; it's mostly geothermal. Because everywhere you go in
Mm,
that country, there's like a steam vent just popping up out of the ground. They have so much geothermal energy just a few feet below the ground that it was pretty cool. Like their houses, a lot of their houses don't even have hot water heaters. They just drill a hole and they got hot water.
that's kinda
um,
interesting, actually.
yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty
Yeah.
cool. So
Well, cool,
um,
man. I'm glad you're back, and, now we're getting right back into it. So, last week on my solo show, which was amazing. I can't believe how much great feedback we got from that solo show. But, I talked about underwriting, right? I mean, because I believe underwriting is the basis of all deals that you do, and you know, with changing expenses, sometimes your underwriting's thrown out of the window,
yeah,
and you got to pivot. But I kind of wanted to continue the theme of what we were talking about last week because everyone seemed to love it so much. So instead of talking about underwriting, we're the other big pain point that people have trying to get into this industry or trying to scale in this industry is how do I get access to better deal flow? Some people have access to a lot of capital, right? And they have so much capital flow they need more deal flow. And then people like us, we have so much deal flow, but we need more access to capital. So we're really good at building relationships with brokers. And we figure we'll just talk about it a little bit. Like, what are we doing? And little secret here, if you don't want to watch the whole show, is there's no secret sauce in building relationships with brokers. But what does our broker relationships look like, and how are we having those conversations with people in order to get better access to deal flow? Um, so one of the things that we like to do is we make sure to spend a lot of time on a single broker. And the concept of going deep instead of going wide is very apparent here. And building the relationship with the broker is paramount, right? So like during COVID, Tim Vest spent all of his time building relationships with brokers. Like, what was it, like 8 months of building relationships with brokers? You never met him in person
yeah,
because of COVID, but continually responding to their emails and underwriting their deals and calling them and giving feedback and just chatting with them on the phone from time to time to time to time. Every time a deal came up, it made you like relevant. Would you agree?
yeah. I think so. Because a lot of guys want to get on the phone and just, hey, what's the deal with this? What am I? What's the T12? What's the rent? Things like that, and they want to have a 5 minute conversation, right? And that's just not what I've found effective. I get on the calls and I talk to them. Hell, I talk to them about their kids. You know, um, and
Yeah.
and I'm genuinely interested in what their hobbies are, what they're doing with their kids and things like that. I mean, I enjoy those kind of conversations, and it's almost like the deal is secondary. Um,
Oh, I
if
mean, the
that
same thing goes with investor conversations. Like the deal is
right,
always secondary. Um,
right.
but it was funny. The reason I wanted to do this show is because I had a phone call yesterday with a broker, and I had met him for the first time. Gosh, it was either in Atlanta or Miami. I can't remember which. But and I was talking with a bunch of different people. I ended up spending most of the day upstairs talking with him and his crew of guys. We never really once talked about deals, but we talked about, you know, who am I? What's my background? Like, how did I get to where I'm going? What is my vision? How do I look at deals? What kind of deals am I after? And conversely, we talked about talking with the broker, like we talked about, well, what kind of buyers do you guys like to work with? Because, not every investor fits every syndicator, not every broker fits every buyer, right? So definitely depends on your access to deals, on locations and size, and whatever. Like everyone's got their niche, even if they're not like different between mobile home parks and multifamily apartments. Everyone's still got their niche based on their skill sets, right? And I had a conversation yesterday with a broker about a deal they had sent me, and I was really upset with myself because you hear people talk about opportunity cost all the time. Well, obviously with our vertical integration, I've been spending a significant amount of time on operations, significant amount, like with bookkeeping stuff and journal entries and financial reporting, and there's so much stuff, right? Which is fine, right? It's part of the business, but the opportunity cost was that because we haven't hired somebody fast enough in order to do that job for us, I lost out on the opportunity to do this deal. And it sat in my inbox for a week because I didn't have time to even open it and give any kind of feedback. So when I did open it and send some kind of feedback, the response was, "Sorry, man, it's under contract." And I was like, "Damn, that's like that deal right there was my MO. Like I want to get in, I want to be able to flip these units, I want to, renovate most of the property, and then I want to sell it into 2 to 3 years, right? Um, I want to generate that equity and then I want to liquidate it." So like I was kicking myself because I was like, "Oh man, that was my deal." And I've really been harping over it. Well, he called me yesterday about that deal, and he was like, actually, some things had come up, and he was like, we're looking for a JV buyer now or something like that. And ultimately, I was having this conversation with the broker, and he was like, well, we were going to partner with some other people on it and do that deal, but turns out like there's too many cooks in the kitchen, and we didn't have the same mindset." And he called me because of that conversation that we had, where I spent a couple hours with him and his right hand guy. He called me. He goes, "I know what you and Tim are doing and how you're doing deals, and that's how I want to be doing deals." And he kind of told me what was going on behind the scenes with all of his different conversations with people that he was going to JV it with. And then he goes, "Nobody could decide on what to do with these units and like what the business plan was going to be." So then he lightly told me what he wanted to do, and I just kind of continued and finished the sentence. And he was like, "Damn it, man, that's exactly why I want to partner with you on this deal, because you and I think alike. We have the same understanding of how deals work, how they operate, how you can, increase the NOI, how you can reduce your expenses, how you don't need to go full Monty on every single unit. You know, I'm talking about like, spending $20,000 a door, renovating it with, marble or granite and new cabinets and stainless steel appliances and, like all of the high end finishes. Like the property doesn't call for it." And I was like, "Yeah, people over renovate stuff all the time." And he was just like, "Dude, like he was like, we got to partner on this deal because we think alike." Right. And I'm only telling you this story because I want to show you that the investment of time that I had made with this broker, one, because I enjoyed it and had a great time, but two, because I knew that he's the guy with the deals, right? So it's like that investment of time with these individuals led 6 months later to an opportunity because we've built a relationship, not only just on how we own and operate deals, but who we are as individuals and what our kind of like, what would you say it is? It's kind of like when we're all rowing in the same direction, right? Like not wanting to over renovate, wanting being able to agree on the business plan, understanding how deals actually work. So I thought it was just a really good story because I wanted to show you how um, spending the time with the people, with the brokers, is going to pay you back dividends, because that's gets you access to the deals. That's how you become one of your broker's favorite buyers, is when you have the same mindset and mentality as the broker, because when they're communicating with sellers and the sellers are, giving the deal to the broker to sign a contract to sell it, the brokers want to know what my buy box is or what our buy box is and how are we going to operate this deal. So as soon as he gets a deal that fits that, he brings it right to me. And it's even like, hey, like I'm going to invest some money in this deal because I see how much upside is there.
Yeah. So, I think you hit on a key thing there that I think a lot of people miss on, which is you weren't in a rush, right?
Mm-hmm.
You weren't in a rush. And I think a lot of people get into this and it's like, and folks, if you're out there and you don't agree, just feel free to say so. But my experience is a lot of folks get into this, and if they haven't seen a result from a relationship in 60 days, 90 days, they move on.
Mm-hmm.
And there's absolutely relationships like that where you need to do that, right? But a broker relationship isn't one of them. Like for me, a broker relationship's a long-term thing. I want one, two, three guys that I have really good relationships with who want to call me up and talk about a deal that they're even considering. Like they're looking, they're looking in, Orangeburg, South Carolina. Tim, what do you think about Orangeburg, South Carolina? Right? Call me up and ask me about that. Or what do you think of, Macon, Georgia? They want to have those conversations with me, and I have broker relationships where that's the case, right? They'll call me on the way to something and say, hey, I'm going to look at this, but that didn't happen overnight. That took years.
Mm-hmm.
That took years. And those I think I would really encourage people to look at broker relationships as a long-term thing, right? um and don't get me wrong, absolutely had broker relationships that didn't work out too, right? Like we don't see eye to eye. We don't, their way of looking at things is not the same way I look at them, and that's fine.
Dude,
They
that right there is like so critically important, because when your interests and the broker's interests and mindset align, they are able to find you better deals.
Yeah, yeah, because I don't want to frustrate them, they don't want to frustrate me, right? Because if the broker is on the route of finding the guy that's going to pay the highest price, like the absolute highest price that he can, that's not a relationship that's going to work for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what I offer is, I know the market, I know what I'm willing to pay, and when I get it under contract, probably a 95% chance that I'm going to close on it, right? And that I'm going to and then I'm going to work my ass off to do it. I'm not going to call up 90 days later and be like, I'm done. Um, that's rare with me. I'm not going to say it hasn't happened, but that's rare. And most brokers that I work with understand that. So it's very beneficial, right? Like Tim's talking about, he's got the guy calling him up going, I actually don't want to sell it to you. I want to partner with you on it.
Mm-hmm.
And dude, there's no greater form of flattery and partnership than that right there.
Right. Yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
you got, the guy with the keys to the kingdom is bringing you deals that wants to partner with you. You're definitely doing something right. And just having somebody that agrees with your mindset and mentality of like where the markets are going and how the renovations need to be done and how you buy it and also how you sell it. Like part of the conversation was, I'm not going to use specifics here, but part of the conversation was like, let's just assume that the value of the property was $10 million, right? And we could get it for 5. Okay. And we're going to be able to go in and spend somewhere between 500,000 and a million, be all in for 6, right? So your total cash out of pocket for $6 million probably going to be somewhere in the 2.5 million to $3 million range total, right? With holding costs and everything, right? 2.5, 3 million, some maybe a little less than that, depending on your leverage, right? So like if we sold it for $8 million after being all in for 6, you're going to almost double your money, right? And I had the conversation with him. I was like, okay, well, if we renovated every single unit, it would be worth $10 million. I said, but nobody wants to buy a prop. Maybe not nobody. Don't take that as a hard and fast. But most people want some level of value add on the other side of the coin that makes it worthwhile for them to buy the property. So I was like, okay, well, if we renovate 50% of the units, we prove out the business plan, we put in good management, we make it basically like a turnkey operation here. We can sell this at, 9 million or $9.2 million and leave 8 to 10% of the total property value as meat on the bone for the next guy to come in and make money. Somebody that's got meat on the bone for the deal that they're going to buy is going to be it's going to be a much better transaction to sell, because you're not going to have buyer's remorse and or seller's remorse. Like, you're not trying to squeeze that rock for all the blood it's got, right? You're like,
Yeah.
hey, I made my money. I'm happy. I'm going to leave some meat on the bone here for you to go make your money. And both of us are going to be happy, right? That symbiotic relationship is what continues to have buyers coming back to sellers. So like, hey, what else do you have, right? Or vice versa.
Yeah.
It's just having the understanding of really how the market works. Because as soon as I said that, he was like, dude, everybody wants to do like half of the work and then sell it for full market price. I was like, no, man, that's not how it works. I'm a
Yeah.
buyer and a seller. Like, I need to know that there's meat on the bone for me to make some money here. And I'm willing to pay for access to that, right? And still make money, but it still has to make sense.
Yeah, one of the biggest aha moments for me was I did I did a deal one time, and um went with that whole mindset of like, no, you're supposed to get top dollar. You're supposed to get every nickel that you can get when you sell. And we did. We did. But the closing was one of the most painful. Getting to the closing was one of the
Hmm.
most painful roads I've ever been through. Because that seller, what felt so, and I'm gonna go ahead and say this because I know somebody out there is going to think this. Nobody makes the seller sign the PSA. Nobody makes nobody makes the buyer sign the agreement. Nobody makes the buyer accept that price, but they did. And that buyer felt so taken advantage of because of the price point that we ended up agreeing on, that they were the biggest pain in the ass through the whole process.
Hmm.
And it almost came to lawsuit. And it was and when we got close to the closing table, the buyer literally told us, "We're like, the way you negotiated this deal pissed me off so bad that that's the reason I've been acting like this." And that was kind of an aha moment for me. I was like, "Oh, oh shit!" Sometimes, sometimes the biggest, the best, the highest price is not the best price, right?
Hmm.
Um, because
Yeah.
all the energy, all the energy I put into getting that thing across the closing table because of the way the buyer was acting, I would have literally been like, you know what, I'll give you a $50,000 discount right now,
Yeah.
just to make my life a little easier. But like Vitali's talking about, man, like, yeah, leave some meat on the bone because this is a small community. There's a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of real estate
Totally
out
get it.
there,
Win-win
but
for everyone.
yeah, exactly. This is a small community. I want to buy from you. You want to buy from me. We want to be doing deals together, and then we want to do another deal together and another deal together. I mean, especially when you find that guy. Like Tim and I
Hmm.
have Vitaly and I have a buying criteria, right? We have a business plan, and once we're done with our business plan, there's a buyer out there for it, right? And once we find the guy that wants to buy what we're done with, like I want him to buy again, right?
Yep.
I want him to buy
Yeah.
again. So
And more often than not, people
yeah.
like us in this industry, they don't have just one deal,
Yeah.
right? People, it's like crack, man. You got to have a lot of deals, man. You're like always searching for the next one. It's like a drug, and it's sure, maybe in the single family residential markets, you do one transaction and you're done, and that's why people need to get the utmost highest dollar amount possible, because that's the best investment they're going to ever make. But people like us, we do a lot of deals, and we want to
Yeah.
turn and burn these deals as fast as possible in order to create equity and move on to the next one. That's how we make money, right? It's not just we're putting all our eggs in one basket. I mean, we got like what, 12 deals right now? We got 12 baskets.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's that buyer. I've had this conversation a lot recently too. It's like, well, who's going to buy this? It's like, well, there's guys out there that want to buy it when Tim and I get it 80% done, because they don't
Yep.
want to do 100%. They don't want to do
Hmm.
80%. They want someone else to show them the roadmap, deliver them the business plan, and leave 20% for them to do,
Hmm.
because they're going to do that 20% over 7 years instead of 2 or 3, right? And once you find that guy, you treat them right.
Hmm.
It's not just deal flow is not just about broker relationships. It's about seller buyer relationships too.
Yep.
Um, I've
But that's what makes people a broker's favorite buyer, right? Is when you understand these principles and these concepts, and it's not just a one-way street. It's a, how do we make this a win-win for everyone? How do I
Yeah,
leave some meat on the bone? How am I being realistic in my ask? in trying to buy and sell properties, because that transaction that's easy for everybody, people want to do more of those, man, because it's
Yeah.
like, man, I really enjoy. I mean, we talk about this all the time, but like that first transaction with Chris, he's like, oh, you guys made me $4,000 an hour. You're in my number, you're my top 4 buyers now, right? Because
Yeah.
we're easy to work with, and like he enjoyed the transaction. And now look, like the relationship has continued to grow and grow and grow and grow. And hell, now we just talk on the phone just to talk on the phone. It's not always business, It's like he watches our social media stuff, we watch his, and he calls and he's like, hey man, how did you do that video? It's like, I got to do that.
Yeah.
And it's like, cool, man. Like, I'd love to help you out. This is what we're doing. Show everyone your cards, right? Transparency. We talk about honesty and transparency all the time. And it's like, the transparency can never hurt you, right? Because I'm the one that told you about it. So I don't
Yeah.
have any demons in the closet.
I will also say that, like, I don't think most conversations are wasted, right? Like, I think there's value to be had if you look at them the right way. Like, and I'll give you one more example is there's a group in this area that I know, and they're just like Vitaly and me. They look for the same deals that we're looking for. And they have a very similar business plan. And they had a deal that came up for sale, which got thrown to me, off market. And I looked at it, and we were supposed to meet for coffee and talk about the deal. And we met for coffee. I sat down and I was like, listen, man, like, honestly, I'm me. I'm not your buyer.
Yeah.
I'm not going to buy this from you. I wanted to buy it when you bought it. And we just chuckled at there. We had an hour and a half but that, I made a connection. There's another guy out there in the world. And he has 2 partners that know about me and Vitaly and know that we are looking for things. And occasionally they'll come across something. This has happened more often than not. Occasionally they'll come across something that they don't have capacity to do, or it doesn't quite fit their buy box, right? So they'll shoot that over to us, right? They'll be like, hey, I know Tim does some of this stuff. Let me see if he's interested in this, right?
And not only, but that continues to build a relationship on their side, right? It continues to build a relationship for them, because they're helping the broker that brought them the deal still make money on the deal. They're like, hey, wait a second, I know qualified guys that do this. Vitaly says we all eat together, right? Everybody eats. And, for these guys that are bringing the deal to us and connecting us with their broker, well, the relationship is still between that broker and those guys. We're just supplemental because the deal didn't work for them, right? So like, even I think it was last week I was like, I mean, you can call Chris, right? I have no fear about you calling Chris and asking what deals he's got, because I guarantee you he brought it to us first. I have no lack of trust there that we are not the preferred buyer, right? So not only are we helping him grow his network for people that want to buy deals, but if it's a deal, like Chris knows us well enough that if it's a deal that we would buy, he would have brought it to us already. So like, I don't feel any shame in hiding him, because it's like, he's not our little secret. We're helping him grow his business. He's helping us grow ours. It's a symbiotic relationship. Everybody eats, and, Chris gets access to deals that we can't do. And, Kyle gets access to deals that we can't do. But, if we had people in our network that are good buyers, and it's like, hey, well, why don't you reach out to these guys? I know that they do this too, and I trust that they're going to be able to perform. I'm kind of putting, my stamp of approval or my name behind it.
Yeah. And to kind of go off that thought for a second. And I'm going to say this kind of bluntly, but also a little broadly. Keep that in mind. Brokers call their trusted buyers and ask about other buyers. Keep that in mind. So when you're out there and you're doing deals, and you're thinking, hey, do I push for every dollar? Do I push for every nickel? If you're thinking about doing something, just keep it in mind, man, because I've been called more than once and said, hey, these guys have shown up. They're interested in buying. What do you know about them?
And we've seen that before on another deal. And we know the group that didn't get the deal because of those phone calls.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, dude, the sword cuts both ways, right? When a deal doesn't go well, the market doesn't forget about it that quickly. Because they'll get a phone call and say, hey, well, how is this transaction with so-and-so? Well, I heard what happened, and, I don't really want to go under contract with them because I don't want that to happen to me, kind of thing. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, we've heard that before, huh?
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
even Julie, she lives in the Raleigh area, and she's, just agreeing with us here that she does it too, where she's calling and confirming and asking for referrals. And hey, do you know so and so? And what's it been like closing with them? Your reputation's everything in this business, and my God, man, like you got to spend a couple of years building that reputation first. But once you do, like I say this, I feel like a broken record, but once you do that, real estate gets really easy. Like, everyone thinks that the hardest part about real estate is finding good deals or finding money. And it's, from investors. And it's not. It's not really that hard. It's you just don't have that level of relationship capital with either the brokers or the investors yet in order to get access to those things. And I wish there was a magic bullet here that I can tell you that's just like, oh, just do this and then boom, access to deals. Like that's how it is. It doesn't work that way. It's a long-term investment in people at the end of the day.
yeah, and there's no stop to it, right? Like Tim and I have mentors that are on a completely different level than us. I mean, that's why they're mentors.
Hmm.
But they're on a completely different level. Like you know, I I'll give I'll give Mike a shout out. Mike gets calls from lenders. Like lenders call him up saying, "We got a deal. We don't want to own it. It got turned in. I want access to that, right? Like I
Yeah.
want a lender calling me saying, "I'll sell it for you to you for 30 cents on the dollar," right?
Hmm.
And we know some other guys that we work with that are doing it, without lenders, but they're paying 30 cents on the dollar. And but that doesn't happen overnight typically.
Hmm.
Those are from 20 years worth of relationships that they've been building. It's from a reputation that they've built of being good operators and being performers, right? And now
Hmm.
they're getting access to that kind of stuff. So just remember, like, these relationships, they keep building, they keep building, they keep building, and you get access to more and more, different levels of relationships, basically.
Yep. Totally. So,
Yeah. So
all right, guys. Well, that's all the time we got for today. Appreciate you joining. Hope you learned something. Go out there and implement some of these things in your communications with your investors and your brokers, and become their favorite buyer. Right. Just remember the personal aspect, the relationship side of things. So, all right.
yeah. Nope. Can't say it any better.
All right. See you all later next week.
See
Peace.
you guys.